Another day, another court loss for Donald Trump. You know what's amazing to me is how many times we have to hear from lower courts how illegal Donald Trump's actions are, just for him to face no penalties and continue along with those illegal activities and expand them. Folks, it is Tuesday, I think. And, there's just so much going on. The Epstein files, once again, back center stage and making headlines. Donald Trump ain't getting away from that the way that he's gotten away from everything else. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show, dear friends. I'm so glad that you are here. Let's get into it. Hello, damnation. I am so excited that you all are here. Happy Tuesday. And for those of you that are new to the Danielle Moodie Show, welcome. At the end of Tuesdays shows, I do a town hall for the last 10 to 15 minutes of the show. So I hope you all stick around because you're able to ask me whatever questions are on your mind. And what is on my mind today? Oh, for the love of God, just when am I going to get the headline I actually want to see, that all of us want to see? You know, the headline. Nonetheless, this is the headline that we're going to talk about today, which is Judge says Trump's LA troop deployment was da 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 da, as if we all didn't fucking know, illegal. So, this is according to the New York Times. The Trump administration illegally used thousands of military troops in Southern California. A federal judge said on Tuesday in a ruling that accused the president of effectively turning nearly 5,000 Marines and National Guard soldiers into a quote, national police force. The ruling by Judge Charles R. Breyer of the Federal District Court in San Francisco came more than 2 months into a contentious deployment that was set off by immigration protests in June and has since dwindled to about 300 National Guard soldiers. It was also relatively narrow, applying solely to California. The administration is expected to appeal, and the judge placed his injunction on hold for 10 days. Judge Breyer's assessment was blunt, however. Trump, he wrote, had exceeded the limits of federal laws that generally prohibit the use of the military for domestic law enforcement and had talked about doing it again in other U.S. cities, including in California, necessitating immediate action. The administration, he found, quote, systematically used armed soldiers whose identity was often obscured by protective armor and military vehicles to set up protective perimeters and traffic blockades, engage in crowd control, and otherwise demonstrate a military presence in and around Los Angeles. Those actions, he added, violated laws that had been in place since the late 1800s. And he said the administration's rationale for the deployment fell far short of the threshold for military action. So here's the thing. We knew it. We knew it when Donald Trump released the National Guard, that the National Guard is usually asked for by the governors of those states that require such protection, such presence. But Gavin Newsom did not ask for the National Guard to be deployed. As a matter of fact, back in June, when there were protests in the streets to the amplification of ICE raids, the LAPD, who we know is a friend to no one, particularly those that are Black or brown, issued a statement on their social media and on their press conferences thanking the protesters for following the law, for being peaceful, et cetera, et cetera. You don't expect that, friends, from the LAPD. So the fact that they came out again to showcase to the country and to the world that California was in fine hands and did not require the assistance of the National Guard. And so Judge Breyer has now legally made it so, what we all saw with our own eyes. Nonetheless, that is not stopping, right, Donald Trump from deciding that he is going to do what? Invade Chicago. Yep, that's right. Trump threatened Chicago with ICE, National Guard invasion. My city, as Rex Hoopke says, my city isn't having it. And this is from his opinion piece that is up now. Folks in my adopted city don't suffer fools lightly, and Trump is a fool who thinks he can flex his authoritarian muscle by sending troops onto the streets of Democratic-led cities. Chicago, he writes, we were in the city of big shoulders. This diverse, beautiful, complicated Midwestern metropolis are preparing for a likely Donald Trump ordered invasion of federal immigration agents and possible federal troops. Yes, I use the word invasion as it seems accurate. Nobody here wants them, not Chicago's mayor, not the governor, not the people, not the advocacy groups that help immigrants or work to stop violence. If the feds or the soldiers come, they'll be uninvited and unwelcome, and the pointlessness of their mission will be clear as a sunny late summer day on the shore of Lake Michigan. As Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said recently of the rumored Trump administration plans to do in Chicago what they've already messily and dumbly done in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., quote, the intentions here are clear. Nothing to do with actually enforcing the law, nothing to do with actually keeping the peace. They want to inflame something. That is what they want. Trump and his administration, he goes on to write, toadies can talk about, quote, violent crime in big cities, but crime in Chicago is down sharply, with a 32% drop in homicides and a nearly 40% drop in shootings. If they come into my city, it will be for the noise and the spectacle of it all, for the sole purpose of manipulating the masses with unfounded fear, not for any valiant reason or with the goal of making anyone's life better. Because that's the fact here, folks, right? Is that you can think to yourself, and let me be clear, regardless if I was a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, if Donald Trump was actually making the lives of myself and my fellow Americans better, I would be the first to say so. I would say, you know what? I'll eat crow. We were wrong. Donald Trump has lowered crime and he has increased and strengthened our economy and he is doing all of the right things. But the fact is that he's not doing anything that is good for this country at all. Not only are economists, which I'll talk about in a bit, raising the alarms about Donald Trump's tariffs and his threatening of firing of Fed Governor Lisa Cook, but they know that the market manipulation that they are seeing on a regular basis with Donald Trump and his threatening of tariffs one minute and then chickening out the next minute, right, all bodes well for those that can buy in the dip or get a tip that the dip is actually coming. So there's that on one end of what Donald Trump is doing to manipulate markets and essentially put our 401ks and pensions at risk. Okay, so that's one. Then you also have, right, the price gouging that I'm going to talk about later that is also happening because of his tariffs, because there is such a thing, folks, as greedflation, and we will talk about that. But as the writer in the USA Today goes on to say, Mayor Brandon Johnson has signed an executive order that Chicago police will not cooperate with or enable any unlawful or unconstitutional actions undertaken by federal law enforcement. And you can bet that the activists, faith leaders, and concerned residents of Chicago will be organized and ready to peacefully place wrenches in the gears of Trump's intimidation machine. And you see, folks, that is exactly what is needed. It is the fact that, you know what? We don't fucking want you here. You know what? We're not going to buy into your BS with when you say, oh, there is crime and I'm coming here to fix crime. Because what was asked recently by a reporter, one of the few we actually have left that practices journalism, said, are you going, right? We just had a school shooting in Minneapolis. Are you going to be sending the National Guard after school shootings in order to aid, right, those states? Oh, I don't know. We'll have to look into that, says Trump. Are you going to be sending the National Guard into red state cities that have much higher homicide rates and crime than any of the blue cities that you're invading that are all at historic lows? Oh, well, there are some red cities, but there are not that many. Really? There are that many as there are states that are seeing rise in crime because, the policies that are put out in those states aren't meant to actually help people. They're actually meant to create the desperation that Donald Trump is doing on a national level so that then they can just feed their police industrial complex, right? And their prison industrial complex. So, we just need to continue to call out what we know is absolute bullshit, which is that Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about crime. Donald Trump doesn't give a fuck about doing anything other than using the military for his own whims and for his campaign of retribution. He is going to attack all of the states that voted blue, all of the cities of people who can't stand him, who are educated and understand that he has just done nothing more than manipulate the masses to believe that he is something other than what he is. He is a Pied Piper leading them off of a cliff. So that's where we are. That's where we are. We need the courts to continue to do what they're going to do. But when kicked up to the Supreme Court, I'm certain that they will say Donald Trump can do whatever he wants because, they've already said that. But speaking of things that he can't seem to wiggle himself out of, no matter how many distractions and how many cities he invades and how many boots on the ground he puts and how much, weekend at Bernie's photos his camp puts out, the one thing that Donald Trump can't seem to shake, Teflon Don, can't shake, is the Epstein saga. So today, House Oversight Committee met with accusers of Jeffrey Epstein. Lawmakers are continuing their inquiry into Mr. Epstein, the disgraced financier, despite the Trump administration's efforts to quell public demand for information. A committee, the House committee, plans to meet on Tuesday with 10 people who have accused the disgraced financier, Jeffrey Epstein, of sex trafficking, putting further attention on an issue Trump has sought to downplay. Trump supporters have been galvanized by conspiracy theories that Mr. Epstein, whose 2019 death in prison while awaiting trial was ruled a suicide, was only one among a cabal of pedophiles in the upper echelons of American society. Yes, we know, because the other one is in the White House. Here's the thing. Donald Trump can't shake this Epstein drama because Donald Trump is the one that created it in the first place. Jeffrey Epstein had been operating in plain view for decades upon decades upon decades. This sex trafficking pedophile ring had been running in the higher echelons of American society as well as global society, in the top 1% of powerful, wealthy men. Okay? Donald Trump was the one that, after he insulted Mexicans, came down on the escalator, and as microphones are being put in his face, the only thing that Donald Trump talked about more, right, than Jeffrey Epstein was what? Immigrants. The other topic of entree for Donald Trump was always Epstein. Oh, I don't know about that island, but Bill Clinton does. Oh, I don't know about X, Y, and Z, but Prince Andrew does. Oh, he was a terrible person. I only knew him for a few years. Mhm. What we know is that Donald Trump loved to use Jeffrey Epstein as a foil for Democrats. He wanted to use Jeffrey Epstein and the fact that he was arrested, by the way, in 2019 federally while he was president of the United States to bring down Democrats. And so, again, knowing the type of person that Donald Trump is, knowing the low character that this man has, do you think that if there were a way for Donald Trump to bring down Democrats without also compromising his own innocence, don't you think that he would have been running that campaign all over Truth Social, holding rallies, naming names? Don't you think that those people would be on t-shirts? And Donald Trump wouldn't need to rig the 2026 midterm elections because he'd have the shit on lock. Because all you'd have to do is credibly link powerful Democrats and anybody inside of the establishment to Jeffrey Epstein while your hands would presumably remain clean and drag them. And guess what Democrats would be forced to do? Not talk about the issues, but defend themselves against the claims of pedophilia and sex trafficking. So you think, in all honesty, if this man that has literal zero values, zero morality, if he was sitting on that information that also didn't incriminate him, that he wouldn't be selling that to the highest bidder, that it wouldn't be the thing that his administration couldn't stop talking about? Look at all the monsters we've uncovered. That's how you know that this motherfucker is one of the center clients of Jeffrey Epstein. Because you know Donald Trump. After 10 years, we know who this man is. There wouldn't be a Truth Social post that would go up that wouldn't mention the Epstein files in connection with whatever Democrat that he wanted to bring down. If in fact, Donald Trump was able to do that and not incriminate himself at the same time. Folks deserve to know the truth. And the fact is that you know that he is in there. You know that he is all over there. Why? Because in the interviews that Michael Wolff did with Jeffrey Epstein, who did he say was one of his best friends over the last 10 years? Donald fucking Trump. So all I have to say is that I know that there is ketchup flying. Well, probably not because his hands are too fat. Probably can't pick up the bottle. And he's very listless these days. But in his head, I bet there are ketchup bottles flying. Trump and his administration spent much of the summer trying to extinguish the conspiratorial fervor they fanned by promising the release of files connected to Mr. Epstein's case. Attorney General Pam Bondi released around 200 pages of documents in February. The Justice Department and the FBI concluded in July that there was no list of Epstein's clients, nor was there any evidence that Mr. Epstein had blackmailed prominent individuals. Tuesday's meeting suggests that some lawmakers in both parties are eager to keep a spotlight on an uncomfortable topic for Mr. Trump. Many Americans believe that the government has concealed information about Mr. Epstein, 69%, according to a Reuters Ipsos poll in July. The fallout has threatened Mr. Trump's hold on his base, and it prompted Speaker Johnson to start the House of Representatives summer recess early to avoid votes on the issue. And as Susan has just alerted us to, Congress is in possession of the birthday book. The book that Ghislaine Maxwell had all of these prominent figures sign as a big birthday present to Jeffrey Epstein. And guess who has a sketch in there and a little ditty that he wrote for Jeffrey Epstein? Donald Trump. I love this for him. Representatives Thomas Macy, Republican of Kentucky, and Representative Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, are trying to force the House to vote on a discharge petition demanding the release of the files. The House cannot compel the Justice Department to release documents, but such a vote could lay bare a rift among Trump supporters in Congress. 6 Republicans who are prominent in Trump's MAGA movement, including Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia and Boebert of Colorado, have expressed support for Massey's petition. Because here's the thing. I'm not partisan when it comes to motherfucking pedophiles, okay? If you've had illegal connection with a child that is underage, under the age of 18 is a child, you should be brought up on charges. I don't give a fuck if you were a former president of the United States. I don't care if you're a senator. I don't care if you're an astronaut. I don't care if you're a prince. The fact is that if you've had sex or sexual relations with an underage child, you should be indicted. You should be charged. You should go to jail. And I don't care what side of the party divide you fall on. You know, and so again, for folks like Nancy Pelosi, who weeks ago said that any discussion of the Epstein files and the Epstein case was a quote unquote distraction, just leads me to believe that there are people inside of the Democratic establishment that have been complicit. You know what I'm saying? Like, these monsters don't get to exist in broad daylight without the support and power of a really tight, wealthy circle that allows these things to persist, that allows money, billions of dollars, $1.5 billion running through banks that didn't get checked until after he died. And then all of a sudden they want to raise red flags. This was not a low-level pimp operation. This was a sophisticated syndicate that was aiding the wealthiest and most powerful men in the world. And every single one of them that were complicit and participated should go down. Period. Like, folks, you know what's wild? I mean, there are so many fucking things that are wild. Let me just take this quick aside. There are so many things that are wild in this moment. Things that we once agreed upon that are now once again up for debate. It used to just be common knowledge that Hitler equals bad. He didn't have some good ideas and some points that should be unpacked. Hitler equal bad. Slavery equal America's original sin, right? Like the stain on America. Not, oh, well, wasn't slavery nice? I mean, the enslaved did get meals and housing and raped and beaten and lynched and maimed and tortured and body parts cut off. So we used to be able to agree on certain things, right? That, I don't know. I also thought that maybe we would agree on things like our children are more important than guns. But you know, that began to unravel after Newtown. So here we are, where I'd like to think that across America, pedophilia equals bad. Sleeping with, forcing young women against their will to have sex with rich old men equals bad. Wealthy men not ever seeing prosecution and these victims having to live with this post traumatic stress. Bad. So I'm like, if we can't agree on these basic things, like, what kind of fucking society are we living in? The same one where Republicans in red districts decide to roll back the age of consent. The places where they're making it okay to have child labor again and child brides. These are sick, twisted individuals that bear titles like representatives and senators and governors and city council members that pass policy that harms children. So I mean, folks, for fuck's sake, like, if we can't agree on the fundamentals, on the basics of the protection of our children from fucking sexual predators, regardless of who those sexual predators are, then I don't think that there's any hope for us at all. Because to me, the releasing of the Epstein files isn't just to get Donald Trump. It is to bring down all of these men that systems have been put in place to keep them safe while they continue to victimize children. So, I pray that if the Catholic Church can have to face, right, the harsh spotlights of what they did by protecting priests, then I hope that at some point the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Donald Trump receive justice. It's just so like, and how this all continues because how this society, how American society, but how the world treats and sees women and girls. We are for the pure entertainment and enjoyment of men. That is how this world sees us. And other than that, you are not to be seen or heard from. And so while some societies go to the extreme, right? America is no different in the subjugation that it has done of women and girls since the beginning of time. Why is it acceptable that a large majority of women that are attending college right now will likely be sexually assaulted or raped? Why is that number like 1 in 5? Why are we okay with the creation of apps that keep women safe from predators rather than actually teaching young men and boys how to fucking treat women and girls? Why is that such an obscene thought? If we actually taught boys and men empathy, if we actually taught boys and men chivalry and care, if we allowed boys and men the full range of their emotions, maybe brutality wouldn't be their go to. Maybe abuse wouldn't be their calling card. But oftentimes, the abuse of women comes at what? The hands of men. And yet, it is always placed upon women the responsibility to keep ourselves safe rather than create a society that is safe for women and girls. Y'all, make it make sense. Because they have trained all of us to have such low expectations that we just settle for whatever. We just assume, well, men in power, that's what they do. They abuse, they victimize. Me Too came in as fast and furious as it left. We have a failure in this country of holding powerful men accountable and responsible for their actions. And it is why the abuse persists. If we want better, we got to teach better and do better. You know what? And then I'm going to move on. But you know what I always find so fucking interesting? And I really don't care if what I'm about to say offends people. You know how society loves to pathologize, right? Other races, other religions. But we never ask the question about what it is that white women are teaching their sons that have them turn out to be such monsters. We never pathologize white women and white families and ask ourselves, like, what is being taught in these homes that allows for the consistent degradation and oppression of women that comes at the hands of white men and white men who are largely in power and run industry? Why don't we ever unpack that shit? No, because everybody gets to be like, if you're white, you get to be treated with kid gloves, right? Like, oh, woe is them. Oh, why are you so angry? Oh, and it's just no one's responsibility. Black children are forced to grow up as soon, right, as they cross into double digits. If you're lucky, you get to remain a child until you're 10. However, white men get to remain children until well into their 70s and 80s. And we never go to the source of the fucking people that are raising them in the first goddamn place. Just thoughts. Just thoughts. Nonetheless, dear friends, this is coming out, you know, this tomorrow. They're going to start, now that Congress is back in session, they're going to start holding these hearings. There is a presser that is going to happen with the victims of Jeffrey Epstein tomorrow, September 3rd. And with that, that is like chum in the water for the media to pick up where they've been practically all summer long, which is, where are the files? Right? The people want to know. So we will see how this unfolds. But like I say, constantly pay attention to what Donald Trump will do this week. You know he's going into Chicago. You know he's going into Baltimore. And all of it is going to be in the hopes to incite violence in those places, to usher in martial law, number one. And two, to try and change the story coming out of Washington. So if Donald Trump has boots on the ground in Chicago and is invading Chicago, are you going to be paying attention to the victims and what is happening on Capitol Hill as they're speaking at a presser? Pay attention to what Donald Trump is going to do tomorrow and the next day and the rest of the week to try and distract from what is happening on Capitol Hill. Because I'm telling you, and it's eclipses too this week. Wild. Wild times, friends. And speaking of wild, but actually in the good sense of the word, hundreds of economists have signed an open letter backing embattled Fed Governor Lisa Cook after Trump attacks. Notable and experienced economists warn elected officials that attacks on the Fed undermine public confidence. They go on to say this: more than 450 economists, including several Nobel Prize winners, have signed a letter in support of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, whom Trump has sought to oust on unproven allegations of mortgage fraud. The letter condemns elected officials for engaging in rhetoric or actions that erode the Federal Reserve's independence, and specifically cites Trump's recent unproven claims about Cook. Recent public statements about Governor Cook, including the threats of removal and a claim that she has been fired, have arrived alongside unproven accusations, the hundreds of economists said in a letter. And this has been picked up in all of the financial news outlets and everywhere else. This was a report from The Independent. The fact is, I don't know about you, but could you get 450 people to vouch for you and your work? I'm pretty sure Donald Trump couldn't find 10 to vouch for him. Lisa Cook has over 450 economists, Nobel Peace Prize winners that are coming to her aid and to the aid of the Federal Reserve. So whose decision-making prowess do you take? 450 of the most esteemed economists in the world, or a man that's declared bankruptcy multiple times and is selling meme coins and sneakers in the White House? I swear to you. There's just, sometimes you gotta giggle so that you don't lose your fucking mind. So rounding out today, I found a very interesting piece, folks. And this was at the Lever News. And it's a piece that I think that is really important because we talk about the economy a lot on this show. I am not an economist. I'm not even a fucking capitalist. What I am is a person that believes that we should operate from a place of abundance and not create unnecessary obstacles for people to be able to live their lives and thrive because of what you can make money off of. But that's not the world that we live in. So at Lever News, there's a piece up right now entitled Greedflation, with a side of gaslighting. As rising prices crushed consumers, a new study found, guess what, folks? That corporate media blamed inflation on outside factors, not companies' booming bottom lines. A new study shared exclusively with The Lever details how corporate media has routinely downplayed the effects of corporate greed on price increases, often citing industry talking points or providing no explanation at all for crippling inflation over the past few years. Lawmakers then parroted these anti-greedflation narratives as they slashed pandemic aid, blocked spending, and abandoned efforts to increase the national minimum wage. Now, with greedflation making a comeback as companies use Trump's tariff threats to justify jacking up prices, the study's co-authors warn that politicians and regulators could once again use skewed corporate coverage to justify policies that further hurt consumers. Lord. It's like you can't trust anybody to do a fucking thing. You realize that, right? Like everything is basically every person for themselves. Like that is how America is set up right now. We need to counteract that with community care and collective care, but everything is set up for every person to be just out for themselves. Right? And you can't even count. And I mean, we've talked about this for forever. You can't count on the media to provide you with clear information on anything because it serves their bottom line and their corporate greedy fucking CEOs to ensure that they continue to curry favor right? With the very people that they should be warning the rest of us about. But they're too intent on fucking being in the room where it happens that they don't give a damn about actually being the fourth estate and holding power accountable. They want to be at the cocktail party where power is. Policymakers are just being fed this constant diet of, oh, it's beyond businesses' control. Hal Singer, an antitrust economist and managing director of the economic consulting firm Econ One, told The Lever. What worries me is that this is our information ecosystem, and this is how policymakers are being informed. I want to make sure they're getting accurate information. The study conducted by Singer and Abla Abdul Qadir found that corporate news outlets tended to attribute industry price hikes to factors beyond the control of the sellers in that industry. The report noted that many of the articles examined failed to cite impartial experts or note that the stock market experienced high returns during the years companies were raising prices. The study examined business reporting by the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, The Economist, Politico, Financial Times, CNBC, Bloomberg, and Axios from January 2023 to the present. It found that on average, folks, on average, roughly 60% of the articles blamed price hikes on factors outside the company's control rather than profit motives. What? So they're feeding this bullshit into the main artery where representatives and our policymakers tap into to be informed on how they're supposed to make policy decisions. And instead of making policy decisions that regulate corporate greed, all they do is inflate corporate greed and then tell the rest of us by vis-a-vis gaslighting that, oh, well, what do you want these industries to do? Right? Like, how else could the CEOs continue to make 630% more than their lowest paid employees? How else could the rich be able to fly on their private jets and dump more carbon into our atmosphere, increasing the likelihood of climate disasters that create climate refugees? Like, all of this, folks, every fucking thing that is wrong comes back to greed. Everything that is wrong in this country and around the world comes back to fucking greed and lying to the very people that are supposed to gather the information to give to the rest of us so that we can make informed decisions. But instead, everyone is working overtime to ensure that we remain in the dark so that they can fucking bamboozle us into giving away more of our freedom and giving them more of our fucking money. Some days. Axios, as they say, led the pack with 100%. Axios, the left-leaning site Axios, led the pack with 100% of its articles ignoring greedflation as a possible cause, followed by CNBC with 73% of its coverage neglecting to mention corporate incentives for price hikes. Coming in third was the Washington Post, owned by tech billionaire Jeff Bezos, with 65% of its articles failing to mention that companies might have a hand in raising prices. Singer said one of the reasons corporate media likely isn't properly reporting on price hikes is that reporters are being fed press releases or statements from industry spokespersons and not properly interrogating the information. As the number of reporters have declined over the past few decades, the number of public relations specialists has exploded. In 2023, there were more than 308,000 PR specialists nationwide, compared to just 49,800 reporters, according to government data. If literally all you do is copy and paste the press release into your story, and you don't call anyone outside of the employee of the industry, that to me is the most egregious sin, Singer said. At that point, I don't think you're operating as a reporter. You're an extension of the PR team. But here's the other thing that I will say, which is this, that I'm not just going to blame reporters, because of course, yes, they're the ones that, to Singer's point, need to be fact checking, needing to be following up, right, with other sources to provide a complete picture to the readers, to the audiences. That being said, you also know that these outlets receive ad dollars from the very from the very corporations that are hiking up their prices. So if you're trying to get ad dollars from, let's say, oh, I don't know, fucking ShopRite or ShopFresh or, Uber or whatever outlet that it is, if you're trying to receive ad dollars from these places, are you really going to call out their corporate greed? Are you really going to be writing stories that could essentially stop your outlet from being able to receive the kind of ad dollars it needs to survive? This is the problem with fucking money. This is the problem of having no boundaries, having no actual checks and boundaries and checks and balances, is that everyone is operating in their own self-interest as opposed to the interest of the people, which is what journalism was supposed to do in the first place, and why it's one of the only industries, if not the only industry, specifically mentioned in the Constitution. I mean, we have just essentially, it's so crazy because I feel like we have just taken like a car into the future because we're in 2025, but we're really operating in like 19th century days of the robber barons and like pre-antitrust laws, on top of pollution levels that have exceeded the Industrial Revolution's time, right? And just going back, it's like we're in 2025, but everyone is operating who has power from a 19th century model, all of which created the pollution and the need for workers' protections, environmental protections. We're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I just keep thinking, like, when the fuck are people going to wake up? Like, when are you going to wake up and see what these industry giants, what these people, this fucking like circle jerk that has been happening for generations? Like, when are we going to stop this cycle of greed and abuse of power? Whether it is talking about Jeffrey Epstein, whether it's talking about the manipulation of the Fed, whether it's talking about the manipulation of the markets and prices, like it all comes back to wealthy, white, greedy fucking men being the problem. Baffling, folks. Baffling. All right. That is it for me right now on the Danielle Moodie Show. Get your questions ready as we head into town hall. You can write your question in all caps, write the word question followed by your question. I will do my best to answer over the next 10 minutes or so. Welcome to Town Hall Tuesday. So while I await questions to load up in the chat, and again, remember to type out the word question in all capital letters, followed by your question, and I will do my best to get to it. I have a question for all of you that I would love for you to answer. I am considering, and this is for specifically for my YouTube folks. I am considering launching YouTube memberships, which allow for people to be able to support the channel on a monthly basis, whether it's $5 a month, $10 a month, etc., whatever works for you. Again, as I've said, none of my content is going to go behind a paywall, but I may offer different perks to those that actually become members, like badges and things of that nature. Would people be interested, for those that are on YouTube, in becoming a member? And if yes, are you members on other people's channels? And what do you think about it? And what would be some of the perks if I did launch this that you would like? So, for those that are watching this video now, please feel free to answer that in the chat. But those that will be watching later, please do answer in the comment section. Okay. Uh Question. Is it going to take a lifestyle change like an anti-money movement? So this is the thing. I do think that it's going to take so many lifestyle changes. I think that it's going to take a lot of unlearning for us to understand just how destructive capitalism is, and just how destructive overreach, too much power, too much greed is on our society. Like, again, we live in this abundant place, and yet we tell people that we don't have enough space to house people or enough food to feed everyone. And that's just not fucking true. Right. And so it's like, if we were all to decide to begin to opt out, right, which means that, look, I'm growing my own fucking produce with like a couple of people in my, cul-de-sac, or a couple of people in my town, because I no longer want to buy into big agriculture. Whether that means that, like, again, I'm only buying the bare necessities, and for others, like, I'm supporting small businesses. We need to have an anti-capitalist movement, and move towards more socialized programming, and get rid of the nasty taste that we have in our mouth with regard to socialism that we've allowed them to lie to us about. Um, Question. Is it true that this insatiable greed began with Ronald Reagan and the Heritage Foundation, or it possibly started even before that? I mean, Carter was removed. I think that it started before that. Like, I think that this idea of greed and insatiability, I think that it has always been pervasive in American culture. It's why you come to this country where indigenous tribes are already exist coexisting with the land, right? They don't believe in borders. Borders are made up things. Like, you work in alignment with the environment and with community, right? And that was the model that people operated from. And then, no, the white settlers brought in their puritanical vision, and their vision based on capitalism and property and power and control. And so I do think that this started well before Reagan, and I think it's something that has been pervasive in American society. Um, Ghostface Killer, that's funny. Greed is a mental illness. I thought Scrooge McDuck was a fictional character. Boy, was I wrong. Scrooge McDuck, if you go back and like watch um those cartoons, they did amazing breakdowns on capitalism and socialism on those cartoons. I don't know who created the McDuck and the McScrooge character, but it was pretty wild. Talks to you about investment, right? And what to do with your money and have it not just sit. It's real. Like, go back and watch some of those episodes. It's pretty wild. Um Grumpy Cat question. Is Trump trying to escalate a war with Venezuela after attacking a Venezuelan boat allegedly carrying narcotics? That happened today. Oh, yes. Yes, he is. Remember when Donald Trump was sitting in the Oval Office with President Zelensky? Remember when he asked Zelensky, "Oh, you suspended elections because you were at war? So you mean if we happen to be at war in 3.5 years, then we can suspend the election?" That sounds great. That's what Trump said. And that was on the heels of him saying that they were looking into invading Venezuela. So, answer to your question, yes, I do. Um, how will we find each other when dissenters are taken offline? Very good question, Plum. I ask myself that all the time. It's why I tell people to join my Substack, because I am able to get email addresses, unlike I can't get email addresses from folks here. So if I were deplatformed, at the very least, I could be doing email blasts, because I've been thinking about this. If folks have other ideas that can happen in order to stay connected, because that's what has happened. I mean, I was on Sirius XM when Sirius XM fired me unceremoniously for calling out the fact that Sirius XM was, one of the biggest donors to Donald Trump's campaign in 2015. And I happened to mention that on social media, and then I lost my job. So I lost all of those people that were following me, because at that time, this was in 2018. Those other platforms like didn't exist for me to be able to say, okay, I'm picking up and I'm starting here. So it is, if folks have other ideas of how to stay centered and connected, let's start to think about that. Um, Yeah, people talk to me about Discord. I know nothing about it. I'll look into Discord. I don't know. Sometimes I um feel older than I am. Um Thank you for folks answering my question about YouTube memberships. It seems like some of you would be interested in YouTube memberships. So keep your comments coming on that. Question from Norma. Have you heard anything in depth about Israel's strike last week, taking out the top Yemeni leaders and their assassinations of top Iranian government officials? I haven't heard anything more, like what actions, if any, the Trump administration is going to take. But I did hear also that the administration is working very closely with Netanyahu on their plans to turn Gaza into the French Riviera, and that there are actual, real, hardcore plans. I have been hearing that. So I'll continue to keep my ear to the ground. If I hear more, I will absolutely share. Other questions, my friends, other questions that you have. Jules, there's a report that the housing crisis is a front for money laundering, making makes sense. Any take? Oh, I have not heard that, and I don't know. But I know that, again, we have more than enough real estate, more than enough space to create housing for everybody that is unhoused. But it's definitely a money making scheme, but I don't know if it's a money laundering scheme. But you do know that there are areas of the country that have created tiny home communities for the unhoused, that have turned empty corporate real estate into housing. Like, we can do that, right? Like, cities and states can do that. We have the means to do it. There's just no desire. Other questions? Uh Other questions, my dear friends? Yes. Did you hear about the global flotillas, 50 plus ships? Yes. Before I came on, I was following a story of Italian dock workers who held a press conference saying that if the flotillas do not reach Palestine, if they're blocked by Israel, then they're going to shut the entire entirety of Europe down. So things are definitely heating up. We know what has happened to the last, 2 flotillas, I think, that we talked about on this show. They were intercepted. The passengers were abused. They were imprisoned. Only the black passenger was beaten. Chris, who was the Amazon union leader, was the only one that was beaten and abused before being sent back to the United States. So I will keep an eye on that story and see what happens. Um, Thank you so much. Other questions, my friends? Ah, Daryl. Are you staying up to watch a Liberty game? I go to bed so early. I will try and watch it, but if I do fall asleep, I will most likely I always watch like the 10-minute recaps. They don't do that well on the road, Daryl. Like this is what, I mean, I guess we're gonna make it to the playoffs, but I think it's gonna be like barely, and I don't think we're gonna ride deep in the playoffs. Don't tell my girlfriend I said that. She's hardcore. Um, Philip, do you know the Canadian government has been supplying Israel with arms but is lying about it? No, I did not. I will look for that. If you have a link, please do send it to me. Question: is there a crime Donald Trump hasn't committed at this point? I was gonna say murder, but I'm pretty sure that if you act as the world's number one arms dealer, then there's absolutely blood on your hands. So I don't think there is a crime that he hasn't committed. He hasn't carjacked anyone, I guess. Maybe that. Um, Please talk about what Discord is. I can't talk about what I don't know. Discord is a platform that allows people to have, I think, like chat groups and different conversations. But again, that's something I have to look into because I don't know much about Discord. So can somebody help plumb out in the chat that has a better description? Norma, are you following the US Open play? I am not. I've just been like, I guess I've been following it just in terms of like seeing clips. I went the last 2 years, but I'm not going. I didn't attend this year, but I did. I was sad to see Osaka and Goff meet so early in the round of 16. I was hoping that they would, meet later. But I'm excited for Naomi Osaka's return. And yeah, I think it's really dope. She's been through a lot. All right. Any last questions before I get out of here, my good people? So yes, again, please think about whether or not you all would be interested in me launching YouTube memberships that allows for folks to support the channel on a monthly basis. As I always say, I appreciate everyone's super stickers and super thanks. Every single one that comes. David, Ernst as always, Diana, Susan as always, Carmen, Paul, Mira, Ghostface Killer, Frenchie, Will. Thank you so very much. But if you are interested in subscriptions, a membership, do let me know. Because I know that some folks really do like to just have that option. Rather than like $1 here, $1 there, or $10 here, or $10 there. And I would do it in a tiered, way. So do keep me posted on that. Seeing what a lot of you are saying in the chat is yes, monthly memberships. And again, this is not about putting any of my content behind a paywall. That's not going to happen. It's just another way for folks to be able to support independent media, particularly if you are a YouTuber and not on Substack. But yes, Serenity, you could change from YouTube to, Substack. It's different, it's different things that I put up in different places. But and there are some people who are not on Substack at all and don't even know what the hell it is. So that are here on YouTube. So I wanted to give options for folks here. All right, my dear friends, thank you so much for tuning in to the Danielle Moodie Show tomorrow. Just as a reminder for folks that are watching on Substack, Jared and I are off this week because Jared is traveling. So we will not be doing our noon check in, and I'm so sad about it. But Jared is doing well. And so we'll be back next week. But Waj and I will be on Substack tomorrow for our midweek check-in of Democracy-ish. So do tune into that at 3 p.m. Eastern. And then I am back here at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Danielle Moodie Show. Appreciate each and every single one of you, my dear friends. Damnation. As always, power to the people, and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these extraordinarily dangerous times, dear friends, do stay safe. I will see you back here tomorrow. Be well.